Research Interest Group call. This is Elizabeth Cohen from Hunter Bellevue School of Nursing, and I want to welcome people to the call and introduce Dr. Kathleen Calzone, who will be speaking on Omics, nursing science, and the educational network, ONSEN, which has had really some amazing progress lately, and I'm so excited to hear about it. Dr. Calzone is a research geneticist in the genetics branch of the Center for Cancer Research at the National Cancer Institute. She also serves as the CRR Genomic Program Administrator for the implementation of the National Institute for Nursing Health Genomics Data Sharing Policy and sits on the NIH's IRB. She's a board-certified board-certified in genetics by the American Nurses Credentialing Commission and a fellow of the American Academy of Nursing. She's the former president of ISONG, the International Society for Nurses in Genetics, and she co-chaired and established the Essentials of Genetic and Genomic Nursing Competencies, Curricular Guidelines, and Outcome Indicators, the Genomic Nursing Science Blueprint, and the initiatives that established the Global Genomic Nursing Alliance. She's got a sustained research program in translational genomics for research and practice and education. She's also an incredible nurse and nurse leader, and I feel so fortunate to have her on this call today and to know you, Kathleen, in real life, as they say. So this is a tremendous opportunity. I know that this will be something that nursing schools will benefit from greatly, and this call in particular, because it's made up of nurses from, primarily nurses from institutions with CTSAs and CTSCs, and also people who are interested in doing that work. So it's a really timely and important discussion for us for today. So we welcome you to our call.
Terrific. Well, first off, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to talk with everyone about the Omics Nursing Science and Education Network, which I'm going to refer to as ONSEN going forward, just for short. You know how we all like to have acronyms. And I want to acknowledge my co-lead in developing ONSEN and bringing this to you, and that's Lois Tully, who is a program director in the Office of Extramural Programs at the National Institutes of Nursing Research. Typically, we would do presentations like this together, and Lois is unfortunately unavailable. But she's certainly contributed to the development of the slides and an extensive contribution to the development of ONSEN overall. And so I want to make sure that we acknowledge that. What I'm going to cover today is essentially the background. How did this come about, and why did we think that this is something to do? What it actually consists of, and what kind of testing we did so far on ONSEN, and then also show you features of the website and go to the website itself and give you some idea of what it actually looks like, and then open it up for questions. So let's go ahead and get started. But I'm not advancing slides. That's a problem. Okay, so I don't know how many of you are familiar with the effort that was undertaken with the National Institute of Nursing Research to establish the Genomic Nursing Science Blueprint, which essentially was a mechanism to prioritize what kinds of research priorities we need to have to answer important questions about genomic nursing science, to guide funders, not just NINR, but other funders, to help streamline people who are new to the field and are thinking about, say, you know, a doctoral study or a project that they're going to be introducing genomics into, and what kinds of things they could be focusing on. But essentially to coalesce what was the state of the evidence, where do we see gaps, and what kinds of things we should prioritize. And out of that, you know, there were kind of three major things, you know, the kinds of questions that we need to answer to improve health outcomes, to establish the research priorities for omic nursing science, and to train future nursing scientists in omics. And so all of that is what constituted the nursing science blueprint. And when I say omics, I'm thinking about omics in the largest sense of the word. It's not just genetics, which is single genes, but it's genomics. It includes, the microbiome. It includes, the entire constellation of omics, including also thinking about big data. And so that's the terminology that I'm using throughout this and is sort of foundational to the ONSEN initiative. So the blueprint, which was published several years ago, had a series of recommendations of what we need to do, and that of the things that we needed to do besides conducting that research, how do we get this kind of research stimulated and conducted, is to be able to have very targeted resources and infrastructure to facilitate omic nursing research. And that the panel that was convened to establish the blueprint felt that we could do work in that area. And that particularly in the area of nursing, we want to maximize the utilization of data that's been collected, samples, and expertise. Nursing researchers are, remarkable phenotypers, remarkable detail-oriented kinds of people, and we want to maximize, the data and samples and information that has been collected. And we want to be able to facilitate being able to have nurse scientists incorporate omics into their body of work. And so it is a complex thing to break into. And so what kinds of things could we do to help facilitate that? So we convened an advisory board or an advisory panel to begin to grapple with this. And this was not the only effort that NINR and the National Cancer Institute and the National Human Genome Research Institute participated in trying to help move this forward. NINR convened, an innovative question panel, and there are several other things that had been a precursor to the advisory panel. But together, the three institutes did convene sort of this next step advisory panel, and they met both via webinar and in person, and included people from throughout the research and academic community in a variety of capacities. And the purpose of that panel and the things that we put to them were, we wanted them to consider and advise us on opportunities to facilitate genomic research coming right out of the blueprint, to identify for us where the research resources were limited or that there were gaps, and what resources already existed. And then to look at models in other settings that have been used that could potentially be useful for us to consider in this environment, and to make essentially a recommendation for us about a platform for how to move this forward and what this might look like. And so a reasonably tall order for the panel for a single-day meeting, if you can imagine that. But true to form, we had a good group of people who came up with a series of recommendations. And the first was to create a research consortium, and that we also needed to identify common data elements. And, common data elements is a complex sort of set of tools, but it enables us, if we can work towards using common data elements whenever possible, to be able to combine different studies and do more complex meta-analysis and answer questions faster. To develop a way to enhance the education, training, and career development of nursing scientists in the area of genomics. NINR has been had a long-standing commitment to this with the Summer Genetics Institute as an example of, you know, something that they've used to help facilitate that. But what can we do to build on that kind of initiative? And what did people who had attended the SGI tell us about things that would have really helped them along the pathway? And then also, what kinds of things, I apologize, what kinds of things would be useful in the context of someone who has not attended the Summer Genetics Institute, but is an experienced nursing scientist who is beginning to think about whether or not they should be introducing genomics or some kind of omics into their body of work. And so within that came a recommendation to identify core educational elements that would be needed for genomic nursing scientists. And then the final recommendation was to develop some kind of a web-based platform that would be a hub, essentially, for a network of genomic nursing scientists for addressing all of these things. Now, that's a pretty high-level series of recommendations and is not, you know, granular in any way, but the way that the panel advised us to proceed was to set up 3 working groups. And that was essentially the research collaboration working group, the common data elements, and then the education and training working group. And each was led by an NIH coordinator, as well as someone who was from the extramural community. And some members of the panel participated in these work groups, but we also then had panel members from the work groups engage other nursing scientists in participation based on their expertise or their vision or those kinds of things to pull them in. And so much of the work was done with individual working groups, as well as then those working groups did compile periodically for larger scale discussions about the vision of ONSEN and what it would look like, and creating the actual website itself. So the website, as it was being developed, went through a few iterations, but essentially we did alpha testing to start, which essentially was designed to help us evaluate the content and the functionality. If you clicked on something, could you get to where you wanted to go? You know, was the content correct? Was the spelling correct? That was all conducted with workgroup members, and then was followed by revisions and recommendations for website enhancements. What kinds of things did we need to do to make this more usable and achieve the vision of what the work groups and the panel had recommended to us? So that was essentially the alpha testing. And then we went on to beta testing. So in the summer of 2017, NINR hosted another boot camp. They've done one, I think, for every summer for the last few years. And this particular one was on omics and data science. And so a very appropriate group to begin to think about using something like ONSEN and to give us feedback. And so there were 2 phases to the beta testing. And the first phase was associated with providing participants who agreed to do the beta test a series of targeted ONSEN website activities. Go to the research collaboration page, look up X, Y, or Z, you know, and give us feedback. And the feedback was collected electronically. And then a smaller series of people volunteered to actually do a talk aloud session. And a talk aloud session was handled with facilitators who'd been intimately involved in the development of ONSEN, but also some people from the outside who have website experience in the development of websites. And they essentially would sit with someone and give them series of planned activities and then have that person talk through their experience of going through the actual website itself. And so they would provide, feedback as they go. Well, it's not intuitive for me to find the place that I'm supposed to click next, or, it would be helpful if all this content was on one page, or, whatever the commentary was as somebody was going through it. So it's a little bit of a richer kind of content, and that was both recorded with notes by the facilitator so that we would have something to be able to work from. And so essentially what the website ended up being at its first iteration, this is really the first iteration after doing a lot of testing, was that we start with a background and purpose. It gives people an idea of what kinds of things to think about when you get started with the website, and that there's 3 ways to kind of work through the website, which I'll actually show you, so I'm not going to go through it in detail. And on my slides, as you notice, the website itself is listed, and it's omicsnursingnetwork.net. And so you can go to the website at any time, and this is open access, freely available, does not require you to have an account and to go in and just click around and see what's in there. Then there's a getting started section, and we do have a login page. And so yes, the website, you can go and click around and look at stuff, but if you want to post something and participate in the network as an active participant, then you would create a login so that we would have a way of being able to have information about your posting and be able to have a way to make sure that anything that you post remains current. And so that's on an automated system where you'd get a notification to update any posting you've had. So for example, let's say you posted, a postdoctoral opportunity at your university. The information or the availability of that opportunity may not be there forever. You're busy, you may forget to update. And so the website is designed to, on a periodic interval, to send you a notice. And so those kinds of postings require you to have a login. It also requires you to have a login so that if you want to change something and you realize, oh, I need to edit it, or, oh, not only do I have this postdoctoral opportunity, I have a 2 now, or anything that you want to change, that login allows you as the poster to edit anything that you've posted, as opposed to needing to submit a request or something like that. So you have control of what you put in. You can actually go in and take things out yourself, but you are on a reminder schedule just to update things if you get busy and you forget. It's easy to create an account. You go to the login page and you just then proceed to the create a new account. So it is a little deceiving because it says login, but you don't have an account, so there wouldn't be a way for you to sign in. And so then you would click create new account and proceed from there. The sections of the website include the education and training section. And the education and training section is one area of the website that resulted in the development of something completely new. If you recall, the recommendations from the advisory panel was for us to really help to create something that would facilitate nursing scientists' capacity in omics. And so part of that was, they wanted us to kind of build on the work that had been done by Yvette Conley and others, of beginning to think about a framework for, what kinds of things people need to know and need to consider. And so the education work group set about to establish a genomic knowledge matrix for nursing scientists. And this matrix has been published, and you can actually view from the website the full text publication and get to it through the website, or you can look at specific sections in the website itself. The knowledge matrix went through a number of iterations with the entire panel, in addition to everything else. And what it includes is also sort of gradation of, the genomic knowledge continuum. Not everyone is going to have their own bench lab, and not everyone is going to be, an independent PI. We may have a number of nursing scientists that are actually collaborating with people who are doing some of the actual bench work. And so making that gradation and helping people to think about what would be the kinds of things they would need to know. And then also, it's a useful tool for thinking about curricular integration. What kinds of content could be added to doctoral curricula to help increase the capacity of nursing scientists to integrate omics. So the knowledge matrix is a big component of the education and training website, and you can see different parts of it. It does sort of give you the framework of how we as an entire ONSEN sort of development group thought about omics and all of the components that go into it, including, the large data and bioinformatics components. And so you can sort of click through some of what that structure actually looks like, which sort of feeds into everything else that is included in the website. And then this just gives you an idea of some of the content, not intended to be detailed for reading. You can look it up yourself, but gives you an idea of the content that is included in the matrix. These are not competencies. That's a sort of key thing. It's a guide. It's to help people who don't have the expertise to begin to think about, what do I need to know? I'm not going to be able to go to the Summer Genetics Institute, yet I see a need for this. I'm an experienced nursing scientist. Where do I need to go next? And what kinds of things do I need to start thinking about? One of the recommendations from the advisory panel was that if they had attended the Summer Genetics Institute, they all universally were saying they sure wished that they had a mentor, that when they were done, it was like, oh my God, now what do I do? Here I've got all this information, and yeah, I have a vision, but I need a little help. And so that resulted and translated into, could we identify people who would actually be mentors, that people would volunteer and say, I'm happy to mentor you. And, we see a lot of enthusiasm. Oh, I wish I had known that. I would have been happy to talk to you, or happy to kind of guide you as you're kind of working your way through this. And so this is where people can go in and look up mentors. You can view all mentors. You can type in a keyword, like I only work with the microbiome and I'm only interested in that. And so who does that kind of work? Who would be willing to work with me and kind of help me out? And we're also very keen to have people who are experienced scientists like yourself also think about, participating in becoming a mentor for somebody that is sort of starting out in thinking about introducing omics into their body of research. This just gives you a flavor of what, when you click on that website, you would actually see. You get details about the research focus, which you can select that you only want to see specific kinds of people. You get who they are and how to contact them. The negotiation, like any network, is between you as the user of the website and the person who posted their information. And what's important also to keep in mind is that this is not limited to the U.S. Our vision for this is about omic nursing science, and that can happen anywhere in the world. And so we are not limiting this to just the U.S. Obviously, it was funded and is supported by NINR and the Genome Institute and the Cancer Institute, but this is envisioned to be a platform as a real network that could expand beyond our borders. The nature of what people will do in a mentoring capacity varies and is an individual discussion. I'll use an example of Yvette Conley because we've had discussions about this and that. She's actually happy to host people in her laboratory to help show them some of the techniques and different kinds of things that people could consider as they're moving forward with planning their research. And so the nature of that could be conversational. It could be, much more support than what, one might expect, of being able to go and visit someone's lab and spend some time and get, some real experiences that would be perhaps a little bit more and build on anything that you already have. This is the kind of information that we're asking mentor posters to include. Who you are, how to get in touch with you, what's your research focus, and the scope of what you'd be willing to do, and whether you have a website that you'd want to include that highlights some of your work. Similarly, recommendations from the panel were about having a central place where pre- and postdoctoral opportunities in the arena of omics were placed, because right now, there isn't that one sort of hub that one could be confident to go to that you'd find them all. And so the idea was to create a mechanism where if you were looking for an omics pre- or postdoctoral opportunity, this would be the hub. Very similar in terms of its operations. You can search on particular types of research activities or names of investigators, or you can just look for all of the opportunities. And the structure is very similar to what you saw on the mentorship page. What kind of opportunity is it? Is it a pre-doc or postdoc? And then who's your point of contact? What's the university? And you can actually click on those and get more information about the opportunity in the actual website. These are live links. And this just shows you an example of what your form would look like. Sorry, having trouble with my clicking. I have a mutation in my technology gene. So, the next website is the common section of the website is the Common Data Elements section. This particular content is a compilation of what constitutes, sort of a centralized repository of recognized CDE resources, including sort of making sure that people, since we would expect this could be used by really anyone of any level of knowledge, what a common data element actually constitutes. And so there's some definitions, an example, a detailed overview, and then a list of links. It's very difficult to compile what would a common data element segment that would fit in every case. And so in the end, the work group that was put together for this felt that the key thing was to make sure that key resources and efforts in common data elements were highlighted and maintained on this particular website, especially as they relate to omics research. And then the last page or section of the website is the research collaborations. And this is probably the most novel part of what ONSEN constitutes. The structure looks very similar, but this is about being able to search for research projects. And it's about establishing a mechanism to facilitate collaboration, right? How many people are, investigators who have, a freezer full of samples that you completed your primary analysis for, and yet you've got a lot of data and a lot of rich information and potentially corresponding biospecimens that could be used for other projects. It's a terrific opportunity, especially for people in, pre and postdoctoral, roles, about thinking about projects that they could build on. And it optimizes the use of data and samples that may not be used because, the funding streams that are available may not fit with being able to take advantage of those data, and you may not have the infrastructure to continue to use them, but none of us would throw anything away, right? And so this is an opportunity to set up research collaborations. And what you'll notice is the same kind of infrastructure. What is the kind of project? You can search on particular sorts of projects. Let's say you're interested in epigenomics, and so you could type that in a search field and you would see those. You're interested in, pain, and you could look for those. You have the contact information. ONSEN is not about navigating your collaboration. ONSEN is about people identifying themselves as someone who has something that they think they could contribute and are willing to share or set up a collaboration to do particular kinds of research, and what they would actually have available to do that. But the actual navigation of the collaboration is like any other research collaboration that needs to be negotiated. What is it that you could have access to? What kinds of tech transfer agreements need to be put in place, or data transfer agreements? Is it data? Is it samples? Is it all of that? All of that is handled on an individual basis. But in many instances, it was clear from our advisory panel that people don't know what other people are always doing, or what they have available, and what kinds of things they're willing to actually put out there for other people to collaborate with. And so the idea is to have people, think about what they already have, and is there an opportunity for collaboration or to do a collaborative study with someone, and to post that or share samples, like they don't have the time, but they're happy to collaborate in terms of contributing samples or data or both to a given initiative. So let's actually stop the slides and let me see if I can get to the website. This is the actual website itself. And in the website itself, I'm just going to walk you through some of the content just to make you familiar with it, so that you know what is involved. You can actually go to any of the content, like I mentioned, and scroll through and be able to look at any of the sections without having to have an account or log in or do anything like that. You can actually go and say, oh, I actually want to look at the mentor page and I want to see who are all the mentors. You can actually do that, and you can actually go in and search on a given person and learn about what kinds of things they're doing and their interest in mentorship, and being able to scroll through. There is nothing that you need to do in terms of setting up an account to look at anything on this website. the purpose of the setting up the account is being able to have a mechanism to post things. So I'll just take you into that, and this just shows you that, you know, I've previously set up an account, and I have set up as part of that account a doctoral opportunity and a mentorship opportunity. And so I've gone ahead and posted those, and I can actually see and update any of my forms at any point and be able to edit content and be able to remove content if I think that I don't want that form posted any longer, so that I have control over anything that I'm posting. And as you have your forms up, you are able then to also add and complete new forms as you see fit. So let's walk through the 3 sections and just show you live what some of this looks like. You can click in and begin to see some of the detailed information associated with the knowledge matrix. You can also get to the actual full text publication itself, which takes you out to PubMed, where this is a full text article that's open access, so you're able to go ahead and get into that content. You are able to say, well, you know, okay, I do want to post a mentorship. I don't have something like that posted, so I want to fill out that form. So I just go to be a mentor, and I begin to fill in information. And what you'll notice, even though this is a sample page, is that information that you have included when you set up your account is auto-populating. So a lot of the contact information is actually already populating for you. And what you're really just needing to focus on is making sure that you're filling out information about your research focus and what your interest is, and so forth. Everything on the ONSEN website does have making sure that we don't get spam on the website. In our early testing, we had some spammers, and so we've set up you know, a mechanism. And so you do have to do the, you know, reCAPTCHA where you're looking to see, you know, point out the pictures that are a car, that kind of thing. And that is just, again, one of those safety features to make sure it's not just some random spammer. And so you can do any of these kinds of form completions from within the website or at the time you set up an account, either way. So you can go back and do any of those once you've signed in. The common data elements, we've reviewed some of that, and there's more detailed information, as well as the quick links to all of the different resources that the panel felt were robust enough to be included, including those associated with you know, the work that NINR is doing in the space of common data elements for nursing science. And then the research collaborations. This is where you're able to, you know, learn about what it is that people are doing and be able to set up your collaborations. And so this just gives you, again, an idea of, you know, different kinds of projects that are available. You know, this is one that's a weight gain and kidney transplant. You can click on it and begin to see what kind of information is available, what the study was about, what kind of data is available. You know, is it Omics data? Is, you know, what kind of gene expression platform was used? You know, is there proteomic data? Do you have corresponding clinical data like phenotyping and other things? What kind of demographics do you have? And then, you know, what kind of samples you have? You know, so this particular study has samples that can be used for prospective analysis. So it's a great opportunity for people who are getting started or looking for a doctoral study. They have blood, they have serum, they have tissue, they have a variety of different things. They're telling you how many samples they have. And so it just gives you enough information to potentially begin to think about, well, you know, this is my area of research, this is something I'm interested in, or this is an area that I want to build and do some work in, or I have, you know, a postdoctoral fellow who's coming into my group and has an interest in this area, and this would be a nice fit and a good way to begin to both, you know, help move the science forward, but also be in a situation where you're able to maximize the biospecimens and the data and all of the work that was done on a particular project for other purposes. So it's like the genomic data sharing policy that the NIH has, but on steroids and at a completely different level. And it is voluntary, not mandatory for people to choose to share data and samples and collaborate with others using this mechanism. It does put the burden of setting up the collaboration on the person who wants to collaborate. That's the only caveat, is that you have to be willing to get in touch with Dr. Cho, for example, and begin to have a dialogue about what this might look like and to navigate sort of the nuances of what would constitute a collaboration depending on what exactly it is that is intended to be done. So that's essentially what the network looks like. You can post any forms, fill out any forms, revise forms, just search around. You're not ready to do any kinds of form. You're just looking for opportunities. It's a unique resource for faculty teaching in doctoral programs to begin to introduce this to doctoral students as a vehicle by which to begin their thoughts about integrating omics into nursing science and thinking about projects as they're developing things and their own kind of research priorities as they're moving through their program. So I'm going to stop that demonstration and go back to the slides and just summarize, so the website again is omicsnursingnetwork.net. These slides, I think, you'll have this on YouTube, but I'm happy to have them shared. We're not intending for this information to be proprietary in any way. We want broad distribution, so I'll leave that to your coordinators to sort out if, there's a mechanism for that. But, the whole concept of ONSEN is to establish a network to facilitate the conduct of nursing science, integrating omics into their body of work, and to try to accelerate our answers to important questions that had originally been identified through the genomic nursing science blueprint. And so we're trying to address to the best that we can, mechanisms to find collaborators, mentors, opportunities for study, the things that you need and opportunities for actual studies that you could collaborate on. And I think probably the most important thing, especially for senior scientists, is to begin to think about, well, what could I do in this space? Because a network is only as successful as the people who want to participate in it. And so it really is hinged on nursing scientists being willing to participate. And we've had a number of people, we're very early in the launching period, who have identified that, this is something that they want to do, and that they're willing to go ahead and post and speak to people and start that dialogue. And so it is sort of hinged on all of you as nursing scientists to begin to think about, what elements of this could potentially be useful to you personally, but also what kinds of things you could actually do to contribute to a network such as this to make it successful over time. I want you to feel free, not just to go to the website, but to get in touch with myself or get in touch with Lois Tully, who wasn't able to be here today, to have a conversation about questions that you have or recommendations for ONSEN. We're always interested in learning what kinds of things people would like to see different or would be more helpful than what's already there. This is our first iteration of the website. And so, learning about users' views over time, we're quite interested in that. And so don't hesitate to reach out to us. So what I'd like to do now is, in the time that we have left is to open it up for questions, and hopefully I'll be able to respond to anything you have to ask.
That was an amazing presentation, and we've unmuted people. So obviously, if you're in a noisy background and you want to mute yourself, that's fine. We will open it up for questions, and we invite them wholeheartedly now in response to this. And I know there are people on the line who were lucky enough to participate in the summer program, as well as people who wish they had. So we open it up to everyone. Sometimes it takes people a minute, so I do want to give themselves a second to get themselves on mute and off mute. I think this is I was lucky enough to attend the Summer Genetics Institute at NINR, but I think this is a really needed and important measure in terms of bridging a number of gaps that there are between people who were able to attend and then people who weren't, and then people who attended but needed some more in the post-summer period. So I think it answers quite a number of the questions that people had, or the things that really reflects what the community needed. Any questions from the group or responses?
Yeah, I'd be interested also in comments.
Hi, it's Kristen Fussell from Memorial Sloan Kettering. I just wanted to compliment you on this great talk, but this really terrific resource. I also participated in Summer Genetics Institute a few years ago, and I wish that this was waiting for me when I got back to my home institution. So I think that this will be even more valuable as more participants interact with it, and hopefully it will foster some collaborations. And the common data elements support piece is great, and I really am looking forward to exploring the collaboration piece as well. So thank you.
Terrific. Thank you.
Since this is a call that often attracts people who are in or are part of the CTS, the CTSA, CTSC, CTSI group from NCATS, how do you see this fitting in with the NCATS, current NCATS or translational science pieces? Are there things that we should be thinking about this in terms, for a few of us, there are renewals, that are coming up. Is this something that can be fitted into the NCATS translational structure, or how have you worked with it in terms of translational science, the parts of it there? Sorry, Kathy, that question was actually meant for you.
Oh.
If you have,
how have I
and it wasn't very well articulated, so maybe I can try it again. A number of us are from institutes with CTSCs and CTSAs. Has this had a role in the in any of those the large translational science grants thus far, that you can help us see how we might use it within that structure?
So it's hard for me because there is a pretty firm division between the intramural community and the extramural community, and I sit on the intramural side. So I can't speak to the grant element, but what I can say, and this would be something, if Lois was here, she certainly could speak to this more than I can because she is on the extramural side. This is something I think that people would look to in, those kinds of submissions, but I am not in that world, and so that's not a question that I can respond to.
Right. I think I can also open it up to the group. I'm trying to think about the ways that that people might use this, within their. NCATS does love the support of the use, especially the dissemination and implementation of best practices and other tools that have been developed from NIH. So that's one place I can think of it, that I can think that it works. And of course, it's very translational by definition. Because it goes all the way from Omics to, as you showed, to weight gain and fatigue and the other things that people are studying. If there are no other questions, I'm going to invite people to get in touch with Dr. Calzone by email, as she has so graciously invited. I also think that the fact that the common data elements are supported through this is another, to me, that's another crossover in some important ways, as well as training for people who have not been exposed to this sort of work before. So I think it presents a lot of opportunities on the translational side. And we thank you for this presentation, but more from my heart, thank you for this work that you've done over these last few years. It's current and responsive and important, and so we're really grateful. And with that, I will give a few more minutes to anyone else who has a question or comment, and we will let people at 5 to 4 go back to start running for their 4 o'clock meetings. But thank you again for taking the time to present.
Happy to.
All right, the recording of this will be posted on the YouTube site within about a week and a half. So give us a little bit of time and we'll put it up for you. And thank you again. And please feel free to reach out to Kathy Calzone or to me with any questions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, David.